The strange device that came from the wall performed a full body scan on Matt. He tried blocking it out with his cultivator aura along with his barrier bubble, but to no avail. The skin seemed to go through all of his defenses and he was unable to do anything about it. Soon he heard the robotic voice again as it was finishing up. Error, subject number 80,082, error, deceased. The strange light started flickering on and off. It was red in hue while saying the part about the subject number, but then it changed to green. Error, overseer identification number 6893, identified. Welcome, overseer. Have a nice day. The light flickered out and the sphere object that was scanning him absorbed itself back into the wall as if it was never there. The walls started rumbling and a human-sized door appeared before him. Subject number 80082. Overseer. He had no idea what the robotic voice was talking about, but he was really curious about what was inside. The walls were robust and he didn't think that he would be able to force his way out of this place if he got stuck. This made him a bit concerned and halted his progress inside. I know this is incredibly stupid, but... He knew the risks, but for some reason, he didn't feel like there would be something dangerous inside. He felt that the status of overseer that this machine gave him would keep him safe. Why it was calling him that way was still unknown to him. He made a step towards the wall and then another until he vanished into the door. The door closed itself after him as if it was never there in the first place. Matt felt a certain lack of ground under him and he quickly used his floating ability. The whole place quickly lit up and he was greeted with a large spherical room with not much in it. He appeared out of a random spot in the wall. These doors could probably be formed in any location. The whole place looked like an abandoned hangar. The walls were made from that black substance that he couldn't budge with his current power level. The most interesting thing was right in the center. It looked like a floating cube and it was similar to the one he saw back in the secret ground. The cube was spinning around by itself while radiating faint light. Even from here he could tell that this thing wasn't simple. That's an immortal grade item. The moment he got in here he could feel the massive power radiating off that small thing. How could something like this evade everyone's detection was his question. It must be these walls. He looked at the inner walls of this spheric space. There were many inscriptions etched into them that were clearly working. This place was a large array and it was hiding this floating cube from the other people in this world. The question on his mind was, why was this cube being hidden and what did it do? How many spirit points can I get from this thing if I absorb it? 100 million, a billion. He had no idea how an immortal treasure would be counted by this system. This cube was clearly storing a lot of energy inside of it and it seemed to be powering this whole place. There was also another question on his mind. Will the person that this thing belongs to notice if he just took it? Also, does this place have something to do with him being transported to this world? He strained his eyes and looked at the intricate etchings on the walls. He had some knowledge about teleportation gates and arrays from the secret ground. Maybe if he could decipher this formation he could come to some kind of conclusion. As I thought, it has some similarities to some of the teleportation arrays in those books, but it's many times more complex. He tried placing his palm on the black walls with the arrays, but his system wasn't willing to analyze this, so he had to give up on that possibility. He started trembling at his discovery. This meant a lot. He came to the realization that someone or something had yanked him from his original world and placed him here. This grand teleportation formation was directly over the spot he appeared here over 2 years ago. This was too much of a coincidence. He tried theorizing about the point of this all. He had somehow placed the strangeness of being brought over to a Xiangxia world to the back of his head. He attributed it to being some kind of game and his tranquil mind had made him not worry. Now from this evidence, he believed that it wasn't a game. He started thinking that his own world, his home was out there and he could perhaps go back. He thought to his family members that he left and to the time he had spent there. Do they think I'm dead? What happened to my original body? What is this system anyway? He had a myriad of questions now, ones that couldn't be easily answered. He felt like his original body might have remained in his old world. His soul might have been taken here and placed into this Jiangdong that might have actually been a real person before. The possibility of this being a created world by some higher being was also out there. He decided to move towards the cube that was floating around and radiating massive amounts of qi. Maybe if he examined it with his system he could come up with something. He focused on it and looked for an answer. To his surprise his identification skill wasn't able to identify this item. Even more, he was getting a jumbled mess of characters over this particular cube. For some reason he felt drawn to it. He moved his hand towards it with his index finger outstretched. The moment his finger was 1 centimeter away from the floating object, a tiny spark of energy flickered. His body came to a halt and he felt like he was deep under the ocean. His ears started ringing and he was close to passing out. Ugh! He couldn't pull his finger away. Instead, his body jolted forward and grasped the whole floating cube, which made it exude more energy. This energy was going directly into him. He was lighting up like a Christmas tree, glowing in bright white. Matt felt his bones rattling and his teeth gnashing as a massive amount of pure energy was pushed into him. Just as his body felt like it would crumble under the pressure, something occurred. The massive force was somehow redirected towards his dantian. Something in there started absorbing the enormous energy wave that the cube was trying to inject into his body, as if trying to destroy him. The whole place went dark and the floating cube that was giving out copious amounts of light shattered into many tiny pieces while being grasped by him. Matt himself fell down and landed on the cold hard ground, which was composed of the obsidian material. "Hey, you okay there, friend?" Matt slowly opened up his eyes. He felt like he was run over by a truck. To his surprise, someone was now talking to him. His vision was blurry, but he could make out an outline of a figure. If it was a man or a woman he didn't know. The voices also switched between low and high-pitched. "I don't have much time, so listen well. Don't worry, the overseers won't notice you just yet. I'll be sure to block the signal. I need your help. You must gather more to bzzzzz." Before his vision could focus, the person talking to his fizzled out of existence. It felt like he was talking to him through a really bad microphone with a lot of static, and he couldn't make out the last part of the message at all. He slowly stood up. He didn't know who that person was or where the energy that he was somehow absorbing went. His system wasn't showing any more spirit points than he had. He looked all over the place, but he was now in total darkness. He infused some energy into his body to produce a light source. From what he could make out, the cube had shattered into dust. There was nothing left. It was clearly the power source for this place, but now it was gone. He feared that he would be stuck in here, as he probably couldn't break the walls. Damn, what was that? Was that some kind of hologram? He had more unanswered questions now. Why did he get drawn into grabbing that cube? The moment he got closer, he felt like he should touch it. He didn't even get the opportunity to put on some gloves. Then there was the strange voice that called out to him. It sounded like a man, but he wasn't sure. He wanted him to get him something, but he wasn't sure what. This all started after the secret ground encounter and after he absorbed the cube that was there. Does it have something to do with these cubes? He wasn't sure if he could trust that person. Wherever that energy went, it wasn't him. There might be something stuck in his dantian getting nourished by it. His mind made him think about a certain movie about aliens. He really didn't want to end up with someone bursting out of his dantian. He tried scanning his body, looking into all of his parts, even into his nascent soul, but he couldn't find anything. The only thing he had to go off of were these energy cubes. Does that mean there are other people like me here? Or there might have come here before me? He racked his brain about the purpose of spiriting people away to Xiangxia-styled worlds, but he couldn't think about anything worthwhile. The more important thing was getting out of here. He hovered over to the spot he came from and managed to find it thanks to his good memory. He placed his palm on the hard surface and gave it a good few knocks to no avail. He then kicked it with all his might, and to his surprise, there was some kind of reaction as the intricate array symbols started glowing. He thought for a second and then placed his hand on the surface. He then started infusing the wall with his own spiritual energy. After a certain point, the door sprung open and he quickly jumped outside into the previous corridor. The whole thing was lacking a power source but was still in working condition. He had enough juice to at least make this part of the structure move and let him out. I guess it still sees me as this overseer thing. He was now back outside. He had gone in with a lot of questions and came out with even more. This whole expedition had proved to be a big fat failure. He didn't find a place for his sect to stay as, and now he was having an existential crisis about being played with by some kind of higher being. He was almost ready to take off and return home, but then he felt something. He had to pull up his map once more to examine it. After the cube was gone, the whole area became visible. Right below him was another surprise. There was a large spiritual vein buried deep underground, and it was exuding copious amounts of spiritual energy. He put two and two together and came to the conclusion that this device was probably hiding this source of spiritual energy. The cube might not have even been the source of energy, it was probably siphoning it from the spirit vein. Zhang Dong gave out a sigh. He had decided to bring his sect over here. One of the reasons was this newly discovered vein, the other was that he didn't want others to discover this teleportation array. He needed to examine it further, and with his sect on top of it, it would be a lot easier. The spirit veins were something like natural spirit energy generators. It was something like natural geothermal energy that was produced by the planet they were in. These exposed veins could be used by the cultivators as fuel for their cultivation. The closer they were to them, the more energy they could absorb into themselves and speed up their progress. Just like Zhongdong was able to use stormy weather to hasten his progress, so could others use these spirit veins. Just that these were far more universal and didn't require any specialized techniques. The vein placed here wasn't the largest, maybe the floating cube had sapped it of its energy for all these years it was buried here. The good thing about these naturally occurring treasure areas was that they recharged themselves over time. This was actually something good, as the sect could set up their spiritual formations now and block other sects from finding this place. If those three sects noticed that the United Element sect found a better location for cultivation than they had, they would surely come asking for trouble. Yeah, I found something, bring more people, we need some architects. I think I found the new location for our section. Matt ended his communication with Zhang Kuo while outside of the hole. He knew that they could somehow hide this place from prying eyes, but that didn't mean that they would be suspicious of them. The whole act of placing your sect in the lowest of low areas was already really sketchy. He didn't think that the other three sects would act before gathering more evidence though, they just needed to somehow falsify it. If they managed to make it seem like there was a smaller pocket of spirit metals or spirit herbs here instead of a spirit vein, then the other sect would probably leave them alone. Can I somehow redirect the spiritual energy from this spirit vein into the dimensional regalia? With its aura masking traits I should be able to hide everything. His first thought was to use the pocket dimension. On the outside, they would look like a small sect, while on the inside they would prosper into a mighty hidden titan. He went back to his library to find the right array formations for the job. He flew up into the sky and was already mapping the whole area out. His map feature was quite handy in situations like this. This planet is as huge as the sun, but I remain in this little part of it. It's kind of funny. He thought back to the life he was living. His life here wasn't very adventurous. He had remained in the vicinity of a couple of cities he knew and never left. His clan kept him from moving. The only freedom he ever had was when he worked as his demon hunter persona, and even then he didn't really wander into the large sect territories. He was even slowly wondering why he was even working this hard. Wouldn't it be okay if he just built the sect anywhere and relaxed? He just needed to pay some spirit stones to the other sects from time to time. Not like they would come to murder him unless they found out that they all had immortal level skills. Then he thought to all of the people that were depending on him and smiled. He couldn't just abandon them. Well, might as well do a good job while I'm at it. He pumped himself up. He could create the best and strongest sect that this world had ever seen. He was already in the nascent soul realm, so he had enough time to do it meticulously. He went back to examining the surroundings until some of his sect members arrived. It was Zhang Kuo, and with him were a couple of unknown elders from the other sects that he didn't have the opportunity to talk to. With them was also Zhang Ziyi piloting the large flying ship that was hovering above the tall trees. Sect leader, we are here. They all bowed to him and jumped down to the ground. They looked around the forest area and noticed some of the weak beasts scattering out of the way to hide themselves. They were curious why the sect master wanted this to be the new location. Good, let me show you something. The people here were mostly in Foundation establishment, but all of them stuck through till the end so they could be trusted. He brought them down to the hole that he had dug up. The spirit vein was in a separate cave of its own. The walls were all crystallized, and these crystals were close to spirit stones but not quite. Everyone's eyes opened wide with surprise. This was truly a magnificent spot to set up their section. As you can see, this is a spiritual vein. It's a bit drained now, but it should recover within a year. We must secure it, set up formations to block out the spiritual energy from leaking out. Zhang Dong said what he thought about the situation. About how he wanted to hide this from the sects and how the dimensional regalia treasure would be used. He even wanted to design a separate teleportation gate and place it into his treasure. This way people wouldn't have to constantly use the small medallion as an entrance. This would also hide its true form and whereabouts from any potential spies. The whole sect became busy overnight. The most concerned people were the tribesmen. The small pickup for the Dark Palm sect turned into a large event as they started seeing more and more people from the United Elements sect coming to their village. It didn't take long for them to notice that they were building something in the forest. They were concerned at first, but they had trust in Zhang Dong and that he wouldn't hurt them. The days started passing and the word that this sect would be using their forest as their main base of operations was brought to light. The tribe members were ecstatic about this news. They were even allowed to stay here. The whole building process would take a while, but Matt was mostly concerned about keeping the spiritual vein hidden for now. Unless a spy appeared, then it would be safe. This is also why he decided to stay in person. He would use his map feature to catch any people unrelated to his sect in the area. His spiritual sense filled the locations around the spot that the new sect was being built. This was quite a boring task, as he could only sit around and stare. His people were mostly finished with setting up the smaller formations that would block out the spiritual energy from seeping away. The buildings started to slowly take shape. The first thing going into place would be the walls around the center area. He was going to place a giant castle right in the middle of the spirit vein. It would have an angular hip roof at the top with the sect's name written out on a flag. There would be 6 large pagodas all around it that would house some of the stronger elders from his side. He wasn't sure what he wanted to place into the courtyard just yet, probably some gardens and maybe a place for people to train in. This grand structure would be nothing but a distraction though. The real sect would be right in the immortal grade treasure that he had found so long ago. He didn't think killing one demonic cultivator would let him discover such a useful treasure, but he was apparently a lucky man. This center castle would be the most important structure, but not like it would be the only one. There would be smaller yet similar buildings spread out throughout the forest area that would need to be cut down. They would be placed in strategic locations in a decagonal fashion around it. More walls would be placed between those Chinese-styled buildings to complete this large defensive fortress. On the inside, there would be more buildings like apothecaries, training areas, smithing shops that would aid the disciples on their journey into the future. Matt really wanted to place his sect on some large mountain peaks, but there just weren't any at this geographical location, and he wasn't quite powerful enough to raise giant mountains from the ground to carry them over here. While he was overseeing the construction, he noticed some people sneaking around. There have actually been a couple of spies that he had apprehended during the weeks of this construction. The 3 sects might have looked uninterested, but they still sent cultivators over to snoop about. It started with Foundation establishment cultivators trying to peek, then evolved into core formation elders trying to glide through the forest on their flying blades. He had promptly taken care of them. He knew well that the sects wouldn't actually admit that these people were from their side. Such was the life of a spy. If they got caught, there would be no rescue party coming. Thanks to this, he was free to relocate them into the Free Labor Initiative movement. Maybe he would release them after his sect got powerful enough to not fear the 3 larger ones surrounding them. He still knew that they were just following orders. This wasn't something he would want to punish people for. This day was a bit different though, as the people snooping were far too weak. Chi condensation. He raised his eyebrow while continuing to hover above the construction site in a lotus position. He used his spiritual sense to gather more information. There were 2 people coming and they were still quite far away. If they moved too close, then the United Element sect guards that were also placed around the area would find them out. It's those 2 kids. The spies were actually just 2 youths from the Tatar tribe. It was the Silky Pants that he had met over 2 years ago and the youth that he saved while flying towards civilization. The 2 were now moving in unison towards the construction. This location wasn't that far away from their village, so they could probably reach it within the day. Did someone fall asleep on the job back at the village? He had told Zhang Kuo to make sure that the villagers wouldn't go towards their sect's new location. Even if the possibility was low, they could be captured by the enemy sects and forced to cough up some intel if they wandered in too deep. He gave out a sigh and used his communication jade to call his retainer. He couldn't really leave his spot, and this wasn't something a sect leader should be dealing with. In a matter of minutes, there were 2 cultivators at their location. The youths were scared out of their wits and tried apologizing. From what he could tell, the reason they wandered into the forest was to join the sect. They were promptly removed from the premises by the 2 sect members that consisted of 1 Feng clan member and 1 Huo clan member. They wanted to join the sect. He thought to himself. It was a bit too soon for that, but in the future, he wanted to expand. He needed a batch of fresh recruits that were around the land. Some of the sects were strenuous with this process, making the new disciples go through rigorous tests. Some used connections with rich families to procure favor while accepting their youths into their midst. He didn't really want people getting into his sect just by association. The 3 main clans were an exception, as they were considered the founding members. He moved his gaze back to the people below as he went back to watching the progress. If you didn't count the spies from the other sects, the days went by peacefully. They were on the right path, but as always he and his people needed time, and he hoped that this time around they would have enough on their side. Matt was sitting in a new-made room. The whole sect was busy at work with constructing the new stronghold, and he was stuck here with them. He had spent a couple of months hovering in the clouds and watching for any potential spies or people that could cause trouble. The life of the sect leader was proving to be somewhat boring. His two friends weren't here either. Huo Jiang was patrolling the borders and Feng Lina was moving between the lands and guarding their resource convoys. He, as the strongest of their cultivators, was defending the dimensional regalia along with the new location. There was nothing interesting to keep him busy though. He couldn't really cultivate as they needed him to keep watch. There was no radio, no TV, and the holograms that he made were back at the old Zhang headquarters. If they were here he could at least listen to some news and laugh at the stern presentation. This sucks, how much longer will this take? They had managed to prepare a makeshift room for him. He had a quill in his hand and there was a large canvas on the wall. He was using it to redraw the area around them while using the system map as a reference. He did find some mineral pockets deep underground along with some other resources. They could use them to bolster their depleted stock as after the war there wasn't much left. Luckily the Feng clan and Huo clan weren't hit that hard, they still had all of their stock. After Huo Jiang's father discovered that his son was using an immortal grade technique, he quickly changed his tune. He was all in from that point. Jiang even asked Zhang Dong if he would permit him to let his father use the same cultivation technique as him. He just shrugged and gave him the okay. He had given Jiang that as a present and he could do with it as he pleased. The idea of drawing the map came to him as a means to end this boredom. He was also working on copying down some cultivation techniques for the future sect disciples. He had even decided on the color grading of the robes. With the help of some sect members that were not as color blind as he was. At first, he wanted to separate everyone into a different element. Red for fire, blue for water, and so on. This would be a bit jarring as there were quite a few elements and it would just be too bothersome. First, the disciples would start out in plain grey robes. These would be what every outer sect disciple would get. Then the inner sect disciples would get blue robes and the core disciples violet as it was apparently a color of nobility and royals. He and the other two grand elders were free to choose their own robes. The elders would have the same color coding but they would have added symbols to their robes that would distinguish them. There would be other markings if the person was part of another inner group like their alchemist association that still needed to be made. Everyone would also have the character for their sect sewn into the back of the robe. This would let everyone else distinguish them from the masses. They needed to house various types of learning halls to produce specialists in professions. They needed pill makers, weaponsmiths, beast tamers, and of course a martial hall to house the best fighters. They had a long way to go as they were just setting up the basic scaffolding. It would probably take at least a year till this actually started to look like something. Luckily he didn't have to lift a finger during all of this. His main purpose was to act as a deterrent against the other sects but this also meant that he needed to remain here. And done. With the last stroke of his quill he had finished the large map of the area that he was responsible for. There were many large cities that housed millions of people in them. This world was truly gigantic, it was even bigger than his previous home planet. It took about 2 days to make a round trip around his old planet. When he was at core formation his flight speed was comparable to a jet plane and he still needed a day to fly between some cities and sometimes longer. He was now the proud owner of this land. There were many millions of people living here, most of them scared as a new force had taken over. To them there wouldn't be much of a change, from one tyrant to another was their consensus. No one thought that the other large sects would be any different from the others. Overbearing and quick to anger if face was being tarnished was the way people lived in this world. Matt was trying to defend himself against this way of thinking but even he saw that it was hard to make these people change. Even he knew that unless you had the biggest fist around, no one would listen to you. He didn't want to rule with it though, he would rather have everyone work together in a more coherent way. Living as one big happy family is all nice and fine, but he still would need to use his fists. The sect was weak and they had many eyes looking at them. Looking for them to fail, ready to pounce at an opportunity. He would still need to act as a powerful and all-knowing leader. Maybe if he had 10 more nascent soul elders on his side he would be able to relax. Though controlling so many powerful individuals might cause some internal disputes. The finished map would be placed in the new meeting room. It would act as a good prop for further plans. He decided to take a stroll through the new area. Outside he could see his sect members working together. All of the 3 main clans were here. Everyone working diligently, new relationships created day by day which made him happy. He looked to the side as his senses picked something up. It was one of their large transports bringing over more building materials from the other clans. This one arrived from the Huo clan. He perked up a bit as he felt a familiar person coming with this convoy. It was Feng Lina acting as the guard. She would be free for a couple of days now as everything needed to be unpacked. With her around, he could probably take a bit of a breather as she also was a nascent soul master with a powerful spiritual sense. He looked at his reflection in the mirror while slightly nervous. Previously he never did care about his outer appearance, now he was checking out if his white robe didn't have any wrinkles in it. He even raised his armpit to see if he wasn't sweaty. Luckily his body had evolved so much that there wasn't really any foul odor produced by it. "Hello, how have you been? Aye, how you doin'? Junior sister, you're looking as lovely as ever." He practiced in front of the mirror, his face looked tense, and the way he smiled looked forced at best. It was really hard for an unsocial person like him to actually talk to women. There wasn't really anyone that he could ask for advice and most of them would probably just say that he should propose. Dating as a concept wasn't really a thing in this world. People got together with the sole purpose of forming family ties or making kids. There were relationships with love involved but most of the time it was arranged by your elders. Unless your standing was high, the privilege of choosing a partner wasn't your own. He wanted to punch the mirror in front of him as he looked like an idiot. The amounts of cringe coming out of his mouth were over the charts. He finally decided to leave his temporary room. His destination was the large flying ship that had precious cargo on it. He went out instead of flying as the ship that had already landed. He had a bit of stage fright but he had gone on some mini dates with Feng Lina a couple of times before. They had some tea with each other while discussing the sect's current predicament. When exiting his room he garnered some attention from the other sect members that gave him the usual salute. He just nodded at them and continued forward. The guards by his new room followed right after him as they were ordered to tend to his needs. This didn't help with his predicament as it only meant that there were more eyes on him. He continued forward, whenever someone saw him they stopped in their tracks to bow. Even if they were performing some difficult task they would take some time to show their respect. He even saw some people dropping a massive block made from solid rock just bow with appreciation. He took his time, not really being in any hurry. The days felt slow as he had to be here guarding the construction site. Taking a little stroll through the new land was one of the things that could make time pass a bit faster. The sect workers were busy with flattening the land and clearing out all the trees. This was also the main reason why this was taking so long. They had to remove their roots along with the trunks. The only good thing about this task, they were getting a lot of free construction materials. The trees here weren't of such good quality so they would probably be mostly used as timber or for furniture. They could also be used for things like shacks that didn't need to be too sturdy. The rapid deforestation caused a lot of friction with the beasts living here. They were all lower-level beasts so they didn't pose a threat. By his order, they were to be captured for future beast taming training. He came out of the corner and finally saw their ship. It previously had the Feng clan flag hanging from it but now it had changed to the United Element Sect's characters. He didn't hide his presence at all so people probably noticed that he was already approaching. Feng Lina wasn't the only person coming. To his surprise, his two disciples were also here, with them was Lina's younger sister Nuana. She was hanging around Zhang Liu's arm like a tick while the youth looked uncomfortable. His sister Zhang Shui was walking while being accompanied by Huo Kong, Huo Jiang's most prominent son. There were also various other members from the other clans from the junior generation tagging along. They had become bored with staying at the Zhang clan sanctuary and asked Feng Lina to take them along on her escort mission. It was a lot more interesting to fly on a large ship and visit other places than being cooped up in one place. They had quickly gathered together and most of these people were the youths that had gone to the Dao festival together. Matt even saw one of the youths being surrounded by at least 10 Guras. He looked like he would be having a similar fate to his grandpa. This made things a bit more awkward but he didn't falter while walking forward. He wanted to try smiling in front of the arrivals to greet them but he came out stone-faced as always. The moment the people saw his white-robed form coming their way they all stopped in their tracks. This was their sect leader that was coming to greet them, they all felt honored. "Greeting sect leader." Before he could welcome them they called out, giving him the usual show of respect. He glanced at some of the people, some were being more respectful than the others. His two disciples seemed glad that he was here and he could tell that they wanted to chat with him. His gaze was glued to the person that was walking in the front, his so-called girlfriend Feng Lina. "Ah, greeting to you all and to you to junior sister." He made sure to single her out from the group, a little smile appearing on his face. Feng Lina nodded slightly while covering her face with a fan. The people that came with her looked between the two, they had noticed that something was going on. The person most interested in this exchange was the one hanging on by Zhang Liu's arm. Feng Nuana was a peculiar person. She was still hung up about the ancient texts of her clan. Her older sister had come back with a claim that they weren't accurate and that the clan women should follow their own hearts. She on the other hand was a firm believer that this was untrue and the texts were holy scriptures. This was also why she was clinging to Zhang Dong's disciple so much. Through the texts, she had deemed him worthy of being her partner. She was looking at her sister blushing slightly while covering the lower half of her face with a fan. She looked to the reason why she was doing this and saw Zhang Dong standing there. The man was quite handsome but she still preferred the more youthful looks of Zhang Liu's. She narrowed her eyes while looking at her sister moving over towards this white-haired man. That the two were growing their bond was an obvious thing, which would mean that this person in front of her would become her elder brother. Due to the secret texts not presenting any boundaries between others, she thought it would be natural to greet him. She would do it in quite the overblown way though. Feng Nuana stopped clinging to Liu's arm and skipped forward. She appeared next to her sister that was busy hiding her bashfulness. Zhang Dong had noticed her approach but not like he would stop the little sister of his love interest. He also just thought that she would do the usual bow of appreciation. To his bafflement, the girl just quickly jumped out and gave him a big hug. He was on the taller side at 190 centimeters of height so she had her face planted in his abs. He was quite surprised by the sudden act of affection by the girl he only knew as that girl that always clings to Zhang Lu. Elder brother, little Nuana is happy to see you. He stared at the girl that was wiggling up against him and then looked to her older sister. He could see a vein appearing on her forehead while her eyebrows inclined. The junior members that were standing behind the whole scene were dumbfounded by the act of affection. Was the sect leader already this close to the Feng matriarch and her younger sister that they were okay with hugging each other? No one knew what to do. Was the girl going out of line and offending the new sect leader? Normally people in such high positions were quite pedantic about their face. What if he decided to punish her and the good relationship built with the Feng clan would cease to exist? The first one to break the silence was Feng Lina. The fan was used to block out her rage but she was quite angry about what her little sister did. Not because he was being rude towards the sect leader or that it could cause some misunderstandings. No, she was mad that her sibling had managed to hug the person she admired before she could. She was even rubbing her face all over his belly. This was something that she was supposed to do. Nuana, get away from senior brother Dong this instance. What do you think you are doing? No, I don't wanna. Save me elder brother, big sis is being a meanie. What ensued was a scene of the nascent soul elder trying to peel away her younger sister from the sect leader. The smaller girl was clinging to him hard though, just as Zhang Lu had feared she did indeed have some dastardly clinging technique. Feng Lina even started pulling her by the legs which caused Nuana's lower body to move up in the air. She continued clinging while her sister kept pulling. The other sect members just looked without doing anything as the sect leader was involved. Zhang Dong didn't know what to do either. It felt odd having one cute girl clinging to you, while another beautiful one was trying to pry her off you. Even if he liked the attention he knew that this couldn't go on any further. You have quite the interesting little sister there, junior sister Lina. He finally spoke out and poked Nuana's forehead with his index finger. The girl felt a strange force rushing through her body before going limp and losing all of her strength in her body. She was pulled backward by her older sister but the two were enveloped in a gentle golden aura. Feng Nuana was spun around and placed onto her feet. The moment of weakness subsided rapidly. Zhang Dong moved over and gave the troublemaker a pat on the head before moving next to Feng Lina. She looked kind of angry at the whole predicament but he didn't really want to cause a further scene. He also noticed that for some reason her chi went into disarray when he gave the little sister a head pat. He could only think that she was mad that he dared to touch her little sister without consent. Think we should head inside, the sect members are working diligently, I'll be your guide. He laughed a bit to himself. The younger sister pouted a bit before moving back to clinging to Zhang Liu's arm. The youth's expression switched from confusion to defeat in a span of a few seconds as the small busted girl was back. Everyone just nodded while Zhang Dong walked forward. They couldn't decline the leader if he was going to show them around the new sect ground. Feng Lina remained half a step behind him while the rest followed in the back. Everyone was still thinking about their status so everyone lined up accordingly. Zhang Dong peeked behind him. Everyone was keeping their distance, even Lina was lagging slightly behind. He noticed that she and Chiang kept doing this, they always remained half a step behind him. This was just a show of respect to their leader but he wanted to move past that. Have wished the two accept him as an equal and not like someone above them. This prompted him to stop in his tracks while peeking behind himself. He made a little controlled maneuver and placed himself at the right next to the tanned beauty with the pink hair. Feng Lina stopped momentarily as she found a certain white-haired man right next to her. He just smiled while nodding as he tried to indicate that it was okay to walk with him as an equal. The junior members in the back looked in with awe at the man before them as they knew what this kind of gesture meant. Regretfully, Matt wasn't someone from this world, so he didn't realize what his little act caused. In this world, allowing a woman to walk beside you was akin to declaring her as your lover. This was something he was slowly trying to go towards, but this was seen as quite the power move on his part. The girls in the back were surprised by the boldness of this sect leader. The youths were just shocked by how nonchalantly he had done it. There was no hesitation, no fear. He just went for it, and the lady next to him was looking quite glad. Why is she blushing like a ripe tomato? Why is everyone looking at me like this? Matt was curious about the reactions of the people in the back. He just took a step back so that Feng Lina didn't have to do this saving face nonsense and walk next to him. He didn't make anything of it. It was just a simple gesture of good etiquette. Shall we? He asked, indicating that he wanted to move forward. Feng Lina's heartbeat increased and he could hear it. The increased heartbeat caused him to think that she was having some kind of panic attack, as it was highly irregular to behave this way. He stepped forward. He was a physician as well, so he could probably give her a checkup if he just grasped her hand. So he did. The people in the back and from all around opened their eyes widely. Her sect master was so brazen. He just more or less asked for the woman to be his lover, and now he was already moving ahead and asking her for marriage. To Matt, this gesture didn't mean much. To the people here it meant that he was proposing. The people around them went wild, their eyes glued on the two as they hoped for a good reply. The heart rate is a bit high, but nothing out of the ordinary. Think she is just nervous. Is she stressed out from having to guard the convoys? Maybe I should give her some time off. He finally heard Feng Lina replying. She started stuttering at first, but then she came to some kind of conclusion. I accept. You accept? He replied. She accepted. Everyone shouted in the back with a lot of emotion that caught him off guard. Why were these people acting like weirdos again? Yes, I accept. She replied again while dropping her head down and turning to the side. He let go of her hand and they finally continued on with the tour of the base. Unbeknownst to him, the people from his sect were on this like rabid dogs. Everyone sent out information with their jade tokens about the good news. The Zhang clan patriarch, now the United Element sect leader, was going to wed Feng Lina, the Feng clan patriarch. This was quite the scoop for their people and also a morale booster. This brought two powers together in a bond of unity, and the Zhang side and the Feng side would be even closer than before. This did bring the Huo clan into a bit of a predicament, as they didn't have any bargaining chips from their side. Their biggest opportunity was in Huo Kong's relationship with Zhang Dong's female disciple. If they could get the two together, they could expand their influence in the Zhang clan and get a better foothold. When the news reached Zhang Jin that remained behind at the old Zhang clan sanctuary, he was ecstatic. He feared that something was wrong with his grandson as he was taking his time with courting. He himself would have already sealed the deal and a baby would be on its way. He alerted his wives to the good news. They were to prepare a list of people to invite to the wedding. They could host it in a few months after more of the sect was set up as a large banquet. It would bolster the spirits of the people. Seeing two of their leaders as a couple could be used as a tool to further the sect agenda. They could invite all of the scattered clans from all the other cities. Show off their power and also stabilize their position in their hearts. They could also send invitations to the three powerful sects that would probably send some envoys of goodwill. Marriages like this were perfect for finding new business partners and allies. If all went well, they might bring someone from those three overbearing powers over to their side. There was also a chance of offending them in some way, but they just needed to take the risk. They still had Zhang Dong's master protecting them from the back. The sect leader is getting married? To Senior Feng Lina. We must prepare a big banquet. A banquet? We should make a whole festival, invite everyone to show off our mighty sect. Zhang Jin's wives started chuckling with each other while making plans. The festivities were going to be big. The problem was the lack of funds from their side. They were still a bit low on spirit stones due to the war and were in the recovering process. Don't worry, just ask my grandson's sworn brother for some aid, their clan should have the funds. Zhang Jin gave his advice. The Huo clan section of the sect would probably be worried about not really being included in the whole wedding. But if they covered most of the expenses, they would also gain some face. Everything went in motion. The people were already picking out the venue and designing the best wedding dresses for Feng Lina to pick out from. The man of the hour, Zhang Dong, had no idea what he had started. He was just trying to be nice while slowly courting his target. He had never gone through this process, so he wanted to slowly enjoy it while their emotions developed. Soon he would discover that today's actions had brought something into motion that he couldn't stop anymore. Matt felt that the gazes of his sect sisters and brothers were somehow different. Ever since the day he had received Fanglina and her sister, everyone was acting strangely. He had also received messages on his communication jade, people were congratulating him for something. Whenever he passed by the female cultivators he could hear them whisper, and when he left their eyesight they would start squealing like little kids. The male ones looked at him with some kind of devotion that wasn't there before, like he had accomplished something great. This felt different from the usual patriarchal loyalty that he grew accustomed to, it felt a lot more crazed. He just shrugged it off while thinking that they were just being goofy and that he just wasn't accustomed to some of their hijinks. There was also the problem with Fanglina, she felt a lot more bashful than before. Then just one day after she came to the construction site, one of her retainers stood in his way. She had informed him that going by tradition he wasn't allowed to see her until the big day. What was this big day, or this tradition? He had no idea. He just backed away thinking that it just might have been that day of the month and that it would be rude to ask about a detailed explanation. He was a bit saddened by the lack of company, so he had to take out his frustration in the best way possible. He would do this by beating up his disciples and their friends that had come begging for some pointers. There was nothing better than putting some snotty kids in place with a good whack. Your right side is wide open. Thwack. Zhonglu flew into the distance after he got tapped on the cheek by his master. Zhang Dong had lowered his cultivation base to fit his disciples, but he was still someone at the nascent soul level. Just the fact that he had an evolved spiritual sense let him predict every attack that was thrown at him. He also had absorbed all the knowledge from that sacred ground. He was a master of hand-to-hand combat with both a high level of qi and body refining. Don't swing so wide. Whap! Zhang Shui tried attacking her master after he brother took a swan dive into some trees. Her master just leaned back while evading a lightning-charged kick. The girl then got smacked on the back and tumbled into some bushes. The two were already at the foundation level, so the impacts of their hardened bodies made small craters. Take this! Zhang Dong peeked to the side after defending himself against the two youths. A fist engulfed in fire was heading his way. He just lowered himself while redirecting his qi into his forehead. The one punching was Huokong, and the moment he delivered his punch was also the moment that he realized that he made a big mistake. The youth flinched back while grasping his hand, it felt like he hit some kind of anvil made from precious metals. I took it, now what? Don't only depend on the strength of your attacks, you're leaving yourself wide open for a counter. He flicked the muscular youth's forehead with his finger, which caused him to fly away into the direction that Zhonglu went. Both of them ended up on top of each other. More junior members were looking on from the sides, their eyes straining not to blink as they were worried that they would miss something in this lecture. The only person left was Fanglina's little sister. The busted shrimp just went into a frenzy and started attacking Zhang Dong with all she had. She wasn't weak for her age, but he had realized that these youths weren't that great at strategizing. They mostly tried to overwhelm their opponents with superior techniques that quickly drained them of their qi and stamina. You just needed to be good at evading and reading their movement patterns. After they tired themselves a bit, you could move in for the kill. Just like the rest, she was sent flying into the distance. She landed with her posterior on Zhang Shui and the fight was over. Zhang Dong moved his hands behind his back and looked at the defeated youths, his head moving side to side as if he was disappointed. You all need to work on your basics. What is the most important part of combat? The power of your techniques? The sheer amount of qi you can store in your body? Or maybe is it your cultivation realm? The defeated youths gathered up. His two disciples were a bit surprised that their master was so chatty today. Most of the time he just implemented some knowledge into their brain and then went on his way. Somehow he felt more genuine today and more carrying. The group of young cultivators looked at each other and started to think. They were mostly inclined to believe that power in general was the most important part. Having to battle someone of a higher realm was considered suicide by almost everyone. They all looked to the sect leader, ready to receive his wisdom. No one was even willing to make a prediction. Ha, I guess I'll tell you then. It's your footwork. The youths were a bit surprised by the answer. There wasn't even any footwork involved when nascent soul or core formation experts fought with each other in the air. So how could this answer be true? Footwork isn't limited to the ground. You can defeat your opponent just by feeling out how they move. He explained further. The place they were training in was on sand where their footprints were left behind. Look at the area I'm standing in and then take a look outside it. The youth started examining it. The stretch of space that the sect leader was standing in wasn't large, but they could tell that he wasn't moving in it all that much. Compared to that, his opponents were flying all over the place, making big jumps and dangerous techniques that made them move around a lot. Make your opponents work against themselves, you can control the flow of the battle like so. Zhang Dong made it even more obvious by making his footprints glow in gold while the other ones had a blue hue. The youths could instantly see that his feet stayed in one general area while all the others were random and erratic without a sense to them. This does translate into aerial battle later, but it gets more difficult. But we will take that step after you create your core. This shouldn't be that hard for such promising youths. These juniors here were all the creme de la creme, they would be the future powerhouses of the sect. Reaching the core formation level would probably be achievable in the coming years. The group really perked up at the mention of a core being created. They were all from clans where a core formation expert was the pinnacle. So they felt quite good about themselves when the sect leader made a statement that it should be easy for them. Matt laughed a bit after he saw their eyes go wide. These kids were still cultivators, the most important thing for them was to reach the next realm. Kong, Nuana, Lu, Shui, and Tai, you five, in particular, show the most promise. The sect is expecting a lot from you, but I also would like you not to rush with your cultivation. Building a good foundation is paramount, take your time and don't rush it. Yes, sect leader. Yes, master. Little Nuana will make sure to make my elder brother proud. Everyone shifted their gaze to the short girl with the pink hair. She had continued calling the sect leader with elder brother since the day she got here. They all knew that her older sister was getting married to Zhang Dong, so she wasn't doing anything wrong. Still, she was going a bit overboard and not really giving him face, which caused his disciples to be a bit apprehensive about it. Ah yes, you don't get discouraged. Everyone progresses at their own pace, when we are finished with building the sect ground you might have your opportunity. Zhang Dong turned away from his new little sister and looked at the other junior members that were standing there. He gave them a little pep talk while hoping that they wouldn't feel discouraged. He was clearly favoring his own disciples and the relatives of his friends that also were probably only stronger due to their wealthy upbringing. He already knew that talent and potential could be measured by his system. This didn't mean that someone's progress was set in stone. This was only a number that would indicate natural progress. It didn't really take into account how passionate and hard-working the person was. For instance, if you took a person with A-grade potential and one with B-grade potential, the one with the B could very well outperform the A-grade if they were diligent in their work while the A-grade was being lazy. The rest of the kids just did the usual clasped fist bow while he nodded. If he was wearing one of those flowy robes, he would probably turn around while swishing his sleeves. Alas, he was someone that was practical and he wore more form-fitting clothes. Well then, all of you line up and show me your punching form. Yes, sect leader. Yes, master. Little Nuana will do her best. He cringed a bit at the reply he got from his new little sis. She was acting similarly to how Fang Lina did the first time he met her. He knew the cause of it, but at this point, he didn't really want to argue about it. He still hadn't seen those so-called secret texts and he didn't really want to see them. He would have to somehow explain everything again, which could make things worse. The day continued while he tried giving the youths some pointers about fighting. He wasn't sure if he was the greatest teacher, but the kids seemed to like him. He even managed to drop his stone face and show a bit of a smile as he got more comfortable with being around people. The day passed quickly. Matt had a lot of fun working on the kids and had to rethink his whole disciple situation. Maybe he could even give some lessons in the future martial hall when it got built. Maybe I'm just that bored though. He shrugged and returned to his temporary quarters. He went back to sitting in the lotus position while scanning the area. He remembered reading about people in his position. They were rarely mentioned in the books. Always in the back and only appearing when the main protagonist needed saving. It was probably not very fun or interesting to read about some old man sitting in the room and scanning everything with his spiritual sense. Now he was this kind of expert, just sitting there and keeping watch. His spiritual sense swept the whole area. No further spies had appeared since he took out the core formation ones. The other sects had probably given up after they got reports of him being here. He wasn't worried about the secrets leaking out, as even after months of being here there was no retaliation. The calm days continued. Fang Lina finally flew away with the ship without telling her farewells. His disciples remained here along with their friends as he had started giving them pointers from time to time. The sect continued to grow and his workforce became more diligent with each day. This all culminated in one faithful day when his grandfather arrived. He was awfully chipper as he arrived on a flying sword that he had previously made for him. The truth finally came out, the amounts of sweat forming on his forehead made it look as if he had just taken a bath after he got the good news. Hey? I'm getting married. Matt was minding his own business, just cultivating slightly while watching over the sect that he was responsible for. It looked like it was going to be another boring day as the rest as it continued. Most of the protective formations were already set up in place. They only needed to power them with the help of some treasures and then Zhang Dong could probably take a break. While he was thinking about the coming days and what he would do when this whole grand defensive array was fully operational, he spotted someone coming this way. It was a core formation expert that he knew. Surprisingly, he was coming alone and he was on a flying sword and not on a flying ship. You don't see Gramps moving much without some cute maids. Was he in a rush or something? Matt already gave up on this man. He knew that his libido was unstoppable and he would probably die while being embraced by some kind of womanly figure. He only wished that his many relatives would stop sending him letters. They always tried to either offer him a concubine or someone as a disciple. Is this how a lottery winner feels like? He wasn't sure why his grandfather was coming here unannounced, but he would at least say his greeting. He wouldn't have to leave his room though, as the old man was apparently flying right to him. He just waited for his arrival while scanning the area for anything suspicious. It didn't take long for Zhang Jin to come bursting through the entrance. The wooden doors almost flew out of their hinges after the old man made an entrance. There is my favorite grandson. Yeah, hi Gramps. Try not to destroy the door, someone will have to repair them. He looked at Zhang Jin, the old man felt quite chipper. Did he perhaps get married again or something? This is truly a grand occasion, Donger, you must make a toast with your grandfather. Zhang Jin moved his hand out that had his spatial ring on it and produced a large bottle of spirit alcohol. It was an aged spirit from his personal stash that he only brought out on special occasions. Hey! Is he really getting married? Instead of a harem protagonist, he is probably a hentai protagonist instead. He would oblige this old man. He didn't care if he married another 1,000 women, if one of them stabbed him in the neck while he was sleeping it would be on him. Still, it would probably be best to ask about the joyous occasion, maybe someone else was getting married. What grand occasion are you talking about here? Did one of your wives have triplets or something? He asked while Zhang Jin was pouring the alcohol into some drinking cups. Ha, Donger, you sure like to joke around, I'm talking about your marriage. You made your grandfather worry, you were taking so long. But yes, the first time is always the most difficult one. I remember my first proposal, my knees were all shaking and I was so young back then, that reminds me of the time when I... The old man started rambling about the good old days while Matt stood like a statue. Did he mishear, he was getting married? Did he miss a memo or something? Wait, Gramps, hold on there, who is getting married? Stop fooling around, Donger, you of course, to Feng Lina, I came to congratulate you and decide on the guests. Zhang Dong received a strong smack to the shoulder that didn't make him budge one bit as he was in a state of shock. He started thinking back to when this could have happened, when did he get married? Then it dawned on him, people started acting strangely the day he received Feng Lina that one day. He remembered touching her hand and moving to her side, he also remembered her blurring out that she accepted something. Was it then? Was that considered proposing? His whole face went white with horror. He was getting married and apparently the date of the wedding ceremony might already be set in stone. He only wanted to get to know Feng Lina a bit better and treat her like an equal, and this was the result. Why are you being so quiet, Donger? Here, drink. He looked at the filled cup in his hand and took a swig. Due to his high cultivation, alcohol like this didn't really work and cause him to get drunk. Though he would really like to drink his woes away right now. He grabbed the whole bottle that Zhang Jin brought over and started chugging. Soon enough there was nothing left and he still felt like his heart would pop out of his chest. Hey, leave some for your grandfather. You're lucky that I brought more over. The two continued drinking, but Matt didn't feel like talking about the wedding ceremony and told Zhang Jin to take care of it. After his grandfather left, he flopped onto his back and started staring at the wooden ceiling of his temporary residence. He had somehow proposed and the woman said yes. Normally this would be a good thing, as this confirmed the woman's emotions as she was willing to marry him. He was still someone from modern Earth though, he didn't feel like he knew Feng Lina that well. The most time that they had spent with each other was during the sacred ground. Even then he only got glimpses of her true character as she was acting with those secret texts in mind. Only in the end she started behaving like a normal person. Should I break it off? This was one of the options. If he did this now though, the relationship that he had built up with the Feng clan would cease. The women from that clan would probably never forgive him if he did such a thing to their matriarch. This could even split the whole sect into parts, maybe even the Huo clan would follow suit and feel like he couldn't be trusted. Matt wasn't someone that believed in love at first sight. He was more inclined to believe that love would blossom slowly after you got to know a person better. That's why he felt that unless he lived with someone for a prolonged time he wouldn't really know if they meshed together. There was no such thing in this world though. It was straight to marriage and then you were supposed to pop out children. This also brought another thing out into the open. Was he supposed to father children now? He felt like packing up and fleeing into the deep mountains. He already had trouble interacting with teenagers like his disciples. How was he supposed to be a fatherly figure to a toddler? He didn't feel like he would be a good dad. As a socially awkward person that grew up in the modern world, he didn't even think something like this was an option. Still, he couldn't abandon his people. He felt like he had done enough fleeing from his problems in one lifetime. It wasn't as if he disliked Feng Lina and couldn't see himself marrying her in the future. This situation only hastened things a bit. He was already past his 30s, which even in his original world was considered old to form a family. He was getting a beautiful wife that liked him and not like he disliked her in any shape or form. This might not be that bad. He rolled to his side while analyzing the situation. If he wanted to keep the good relations between his clan and the Feng clan, he needed to go through this. The woman he was marrying was also a nice person that he didn't mind being in the company of. He gulped while calming himself down. The thoughts of running away had left his mind and got replaced by something else. He started imagining himself with a child on his shoulder and Feng Lina walking next to him. Hand in hand, just walking through a grassy field. I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. He rose up to his feet as he made a decision. He would go through with this. He had already taken a swan dive head first. He might as well make a nice splash at the end. Another problem arose though. He didn't know how people operated in this world when it came to getting married. Asking his grandfather about it wouldn't be appropriate, so he needed another opinion. He grabbed his communication jade and sent out a message to one of his retainers, his female one that was Zhang Yue. How may I be of service, sect leader? She bowed in while asking. She was rarely called in by Zhang Dong as he mostly used the more analytic Zhang Kuo. She understood soon after she heard the question, which brought a tiny smile on her face. How do wedding ceremonies work? The woman covered her mouth a bit as the sex leader's facial expression was kind of bashful. She kept it in as she went through the ceremony and what was required from the groom and the bride. Surprisingly, the whole ceremony was really similar to Western-style weddings. The groom wasn't allowed to see the bride until the day of the wedding. They needed to send out invitations to the people they wanted, and the bride would wear an expensive dress. Instead of it being white though, it was supposed to be red. The whole banquet would be set up in a red theme. This color was associated with success, loyalty, honor, fertility, and love. You also could insert some gold colors for wealth. From what Zhang Ye was saying, his wedding robe would probably mostly consist of that color scheme. I need to make the wedding rings. The traditional wedding bands or rings came into play as well. The wedding night was also a staple of the tradition. This was something that he would be a bit stressed out about. Luckily he was someone with some experience, so he was even willing to be the lead in that regard. That's everything, my lord. The wedding needed to be pushed back. The elders want to host it after the main sect facilities are complete. This was a happy occasion, but accidents could happen. The sect's protective formations that could go against nascent soul threats needed to be put in place. The main castle area and the side buildings where the large banquet would be held needed to be prepared as well. The sect had even hired some outside help with these wedding preparations as there was just not enough time. They wanted to have everything done within the next 3 months. The set's building process had already lasted for half a year and quite a bit of the main structure was standing. The formation that was going to siphon energy into the medallion was going through the testing phase. They could even hasten the building process by moving some smaller structures with the help of the flying ships towards the main sect area. He let Zhang Ye go back to her previous assignments as she was also quite busy with all the wedding planning. He took a peek into his storage ring. There were some materials that could be used for creating these wedding rings. He didn't only want to make them beautiful, he also wanted them to act as a protective accessory. With his current knowledge he could add some nice features to these 2 rings, even make them connect with each other. Red and gold, hey? Think I'll just make them gold, maybe into a dragon design. He was thinking about making the rings into the shape of a coiling dragon. He could add some features to them like teleportation, so if his wife was ever in trouble he could always transfer himself to her location to aid her. He needed to wait a bit for the arrays to be activated before heading into his crafting abode. The wedding was getting closer and he needed to create some presents for his fiancée. The months continued to pass and word had spread far and wide that the new upstart sect would be having a festival. 2 of their senior members would be bonded in secret matrimony and become deist partners. All of the prominent clans in the United Element sect area were invited to this event. This would be a chance for them to meet up with their new overlords. There were a lot of rumors about this Zhang Dong, mostly positive ones. He was supposedly a generous man that favored the weak while being an honorable warrior. Every large city that was comparable in size to Spirit Spring City or Moonlight City had one of these clans. They mostly had to have a core formation elder in their midst to be eligible for an invitation. Everyone was skeptical at first. The Dark Palm sect was gone but not due to the United Element sect. They were taken out by the 3 other large sects from the area and not by this new one. They feared that if they socialized too much with these upstarts that the other large powers could take their anger out on them. They took a wait-and-see approach without taking any sides. Time continued to fly but for some reason, even after the Dark Palm sect's demise, the other 3 sects didn't seem interested in attacking the upstart. Then updated news arrived that Zhang Dong's master was apparently someone that was to be feared. He was the sole reason that the 3 sects didn't move in to seize the rest of the lands. There was also info that the 3 United Element sect elders outclassed regular nascent soul masters. This was evidence enough for the weaker clans to seek an audience. Everyone knew that the quickest way to prominence was joining a powerful sect. Even though this one was only starting out and it was dangerous, they still had nascent soul elders on their side. This wedding would be a good opportunity to make a good impression, so they all needed to get some gifts ready. Everyone used their spies to get information about the most prominent people in the sect. There were some discrepancies but everyone agreed that Zhang Dong was probably the strongest one from them all. The next in line was Huoqiang, followed by Fang Lina in tow, though her status might have been higher as she was the bride. Then the 4th most influential person in the sect wasn't even at the great circle of core formation. No, Zhang Jin was considered next up as he had the ear of the sect leader and could affect his decisions. After that, it blurred as the sect was still new and the inner workings weren't clear. The clans were wary of the nascent soul masters, so most of them decided to go for an easier target to bribe. This would be Zhang Jin, and he was quite infamous in the land. He had stolen quite a few brides in his younger days and never ceased doing it to this day. Concubines and alcohol would be on the people's agenda. Getting one of their sisters in bed with this old pervert was cruel, but they saw this as an opportunity to prosper. Plus, they couldn't really do that with Zhang Dong as his deist partner was also a nascent soul master. Trying to give away their daughters to him could bring ruin to them by Feng Lina's hand. There were also lower priority targets like Zhang Dong's disciples. Also anyone from the inner circle that belonged to one of the 3 clans that established that sect. The probability of gaining their trust was low, but they had to try as it was a golden ticket to prosperity. While the clans with lesser power made their preparations, the 3 sects were in a bind. Should they send envoys to the wedding, or should they ignore these newbies and show that they weren't on their level by ignoring the invitations? Each one of them had tried gathering more information during the period that they were building their base. They didn't come up with any substantial evidence of the reason they were in the lower lands. From their standpoint, Zhang Dong had to be crazy to wish to build his sect at that location. There was just nothing of value hidden there. The investigations brought nothing, and all of the spies that wandered too close to the building site vanished. They then received word that their sect leader was seen patrolling the whole area and figured that they would need someone close to him in strength to get anywhere. This they weren't willing to do as they still feared the man that was backing him. In the end, they decided to send someone over that was expandable. They didn't need to move their nascent soul masters yet, but could at least show some good faith. This was also an opportunity for them to see how this new sect operated. It had been about a year since they started rebuilding and they were close to completion. While everyone was finalizing their schemes of either getting on the good side of the new sect or spying on them, a nervous Zhang Dong was pacing back and forth in his room. He had managed to prepare the wedding rings and was now getting cold feet. While busy with his work, he could relax and not think about the commitment he would be making towards the Feng matriarch. He had made 2 identical golden rings. They were of a dragon and phoenix that were entangling each other. He got the idea from Lina's and his soul beasts that were a dragon and a phoenix. Just as he wanted, he had added a teleportation function to both of them. He could either teleport to her or have her teleport to him in times of need. There was also a tracking function connected to his system. This would show him his wife's last location if ever something blocked out his teleportation or if the rings got damaged. There wasn't enough space to fit too many enchantments into the items. So he had to settle for the teleportation function in a barrier that would appear as a large bubble and shield her from harm. It could also be later recharged if she used up this protective measure. He had been able to relax after the protective arrays had been set up. He inspected them by himself and even tested out their power. They were able to even take hits from him that were equal to a nascent soul expert at the late stage. Thanks to the spirit vein, he didn't need to use his system points to power the cubes that acted as batteries. The siphoning array that was the most important one was also completed, and now all of that natural spiritual energy was being funneled into the dimensional regalia treasure. The longer this continued, the larger the floating island got. There was now enough space to fit large structures for their core disciples and core elders. Building them would have to wait till they started with their recruitment drive. They were finished with the main structure and the walls surrounding it, but still had to prepare the side buildings that would be used by the outer sect disciples. They also needed to organize the food and prepare some occupations for their new disciples. They wouldn't just allow strangers into their minds without making them work for it. That's why they were going to set up a merit-based system. They would also have something akin to a notice board with job listings. The elders would place jobs that the disciples could perform for them, like helping with pill forging, procuring herbs, or even going out of the sect to hunt beasts to bring back cores or food. Everything was moving forward fast, and it seemed that the sect would be taking flight soon. The sect wasn't the thing on Matt's mind though, no. He was the groom and he hadn't been able to see his bride for a couple of months now. The closer to the date of the wedding, the more nervous he became. He had gone through the whole thing in his head a couple of times, but he was still anxious. What if he says something stupid? What if they don't get along with each other? What if that sister of hers tries doing something silly again? There was a myriad of questions flying around in his head. The tranquil mind technique seemed to be working a bit less since he got to the nascent soul level, probably because he got it while he was still at the core formation level. While he was looking over the wedding rings, checking if they weren't chipped in any place, a small group of female cultivators walked in, Zhangya at the front. "Sect leader, we have brought the designs for your wedding robe." There were 5 women of various ages here, even one that could be his grandmother. They started bringing out robe after robe and hung them out for him to see. A giant mirror was also brought out and placed to the side so he could see how they fit him. They were mostly in red and golden color, some of them purple or violet, as that was also considered the color of nobility. He would rather use his white clothes, but apparently white was attributed to mourning and bad luck, which didn't really fit the joyous occasion that was the wedding. The women that Zhang Yi, her included, looked quite eager to make their sect leader try on all of these robes. He had to get this over with, so he let them use him as a dress-up doll. They continued to squeal with joy each time he came out in a brand new robe. He even was coerced into putting on a silly hat and a black and gold fan with a dragon pattern. In the end, he was forced to decide on a long flowy red robe. It was all in crimson with dragon patterns running all over it. He was also wearing some kind of rectangular hat with 12 strings of beads hanging out in the front of his forehead. From what he knew, these kinds of hats were worn by men of power. The wiggly beads on the strings were there to remind him that he shouldn't make any sudden movements to make them wobble. They were to remain unmoving while he kept a straight posture. The group of ladies finally let him have his rest, and the date of the wedding approached closer. He didn't know what kind of wedding dress Fanglina was going to wear, but considering it was the Giru clan we were talking about, she might appear in something closer looking to a Western wedding dress. Though he had convinced her to lose those traditions, so she might appear in something to match his red and gold appearance. Soon the day of the wedding came. The banquet would be held inside the new large sect castle building in a giant hall. There were numerous round tables with golden tablecloths. Everything was on red and gold, the chairs and decorations included. There were beautiful fountains with golden dragon and phoenix heads spitting out spiritual water that glowed in a blue hue. Murals depicted some of the struggles that their sect leader had to go through. The soul beasts of Huoqiang, Fanglina, and Zhang Dong were all depicted on the walls, looking quite ferocious after one of the more artistically inclined sect brothers witnessed their battle. This space was quite empty at the moment, as the guests from the sects were only just arriving. The large numbers of ships and cultivators on swords were slowly flying this way. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was some kind of invasion. In reality, there wasn't even a single person that was at the nascent soul level that was coming this way. Most of the people gathered here were from the clans that were even weaker than the Huo clan was before they rose to more prominence with the United Element sect. While the guests were coming, a pale-looking Zhang Dong was looking at himself in the mirror. He was all dressed up in his groom's robe and had to now go out to greet the guests. His wife was going to arrive soon and he was getting cold feet. He gave himself a double smack to the face with his palms. His cheeks went slightly red as he finally mustered the courage to walk out of the room. He put on his poker face while pushing the large door wide open, his retainers already waiting outside. Let's get married. Outside the main United Element sect's newly built palace was a giant courtyard. There was one main path lined out with cherry blossoms. To the sides were chairs in the usual gold and red coloring. Some people might think that all this extravagant gold coloring scheme was extremely costly, but they would be wrong. Gold wasn't really a metal that cultivators appreciated that much. You even stopped really trading in golden coins after reaching the foundation establishment level and then switched over to spirit stones. This wide path would be the one that Feng Lina would walk through. Zhang Dong was supposed to receive her by the entrance of the castle. After which the two would walk in and be wed by a marriage officiant. There were no religious priests here, so this would be done by Zhang Jin. In most cases this would be done by an elder that was of a high ranking. Such an honor would fall on Huoqiang, but he refused and Zhang Jin was chosen instead. After this was done, everyone would be led into the banquet hall for a party. This part was less extravagant than the weddings from back on Earth. There wouldn't be any dancing and the couple of the hour were going to just greet the people and accept some gifts. This would probably be quite boring and take a while as there were quite a lot of people coming to this event. At the moment Zhang Dong was looking at the inside of the castle structure. He was standing at the large gate-like doors through which he would be guiding Feng Lina inside. On the inside was a large hall that was decorated in red and gold yet again. He could even see the podium on which they were supposed to repeat their vows. This is really happening. If his body was normal he would probably be drenched in sweat. The little hat with the green jade beads was wiggling around each time he made a step. If he concentrated a bit he could move without it wobbling around, but he was a bit too nervous to focus now. Sect leader, the guests are arriving as we speak, you should get ready. Zhang Ye's voice sounded from the side, which made Zhang Dong's flinch a bit. Even she could tell that her patriarch was a bit out of it, which made her hold her hand to her mouth and chuckle. She was glad that she saw some humanity under that emotionless face from time to time. Due to Zhang Dong keeping up his facade, most people considered him to be the perfect stone-faced no-nonsense cultivator. In reality, he still wasn't quite sure if what he was doing was something that a leader would do. Ah yes, when the door opens I'll just step out and greet the bride just as we rehearsed. He nodded towards Zhang Ye that moved away to accept some of the guests. He could hear people talking and chairs moving, which indicated that the crowds were getting seated. There weren't quite enough chairs to fit all of the people, so the junior members were expected to stand. They would also remain outside the wedding hall and mingle with each other, as only the more prominent figures were allowed to witness the whole marriage and then the banquet. Matt moved his hands up. The robe he was wearing was quite long. His sleeves were super baggy, and when he moved his hands around they would just swish and shake. He wondered how people could actually consider fighting in robes like these, as he faced some cultivators that wore similar ones to battle. Suddenly the doors started opening. This made his heart jump. He quickly straightened himself out. He couldn't let this annoying flowy bead hat jiggle. It would be considered bad luck and also a hit to his face if he didn't move as a proper kingly figure. Though he could probably force the beads to stop from moving with his spiritual force. This would be noticed by the other cultivators, which would be quite shameful. He gave out one last sigh before stepping forward. His posture impeccable, and even when he stepped forward his ceremonial hat didn't move at all. He was greeted by bright lights and the shining sun that momentarily stunned his vision. After his eyes adjusted he was stupefied even more. On the other side of the long pathway that was lined up by cherry blossoms stood his bride. She was wearing a red dress with golden patterns that looked like phoenixes. Parts of the wedding dress were very form-fitting, as he could see her thin waistline and pronounced chest. On the other hand, her sleeves were uncharacteristically long. They would reach all the way to the ground if she stretched out her arms to the side. The lower long skirt was also quite a thing to look at. Besides all the intricate pattern designs, it was being held up by small green birds. The birds were probably some tamed beasts, and they were holding up the long skirt from the back as it stretched for at least 5 meters. He couldn't see Lena's face yet as it was under a veil, but he could kind of see her eyes under that semi-transparent cloth. She took a step forward and her high heels clicked on the smooth polished marble floor. All of the guests stood up as the bride approached. Some were crying, some were smiling, while some remained untouched by the occasion. Zhang Dong gulped a bit that made his hat almost move. He was astonished after seeing Feng Lina's curvaceous figure. He wasn't sure if she was just blessed or if it was due to the body refining technique that she was using. He straightened out while people were focused on the bride. Finally, she began to move. Some kind of Eastern tune started playing. There were a couple of people playing on the zithers while the bride moved forward. To his surprise, one of them was Zhang Shui that was also wearing a slightly less extravagant red and golden robe. The closer his wife got the more nervous he became, but she continued. Her strides were short but resolute. He wasn't sure if she liked him that much, but she didn't seem as on the fence as he was. This was a reassuring thought which made Matt a bit less nervous. The cherry blossoms danced around behind her as she continued with her slow walk. Behind her, you could see some of her family members. They were all dressed up and most of their faces were unknown to him. The only two people that he recognized was her younger sister and the baked potato granny that was bawling her eyes out. She was loudly sobbing while voicing out her appreciation that her little granddaughter was getting married. He also was a bit scared that that little sister of hers would try to pull something during this wedding. There were works of fiction where someone interrupted the wedding while the pair was taking their vows. What if she tried to grab him from the altar while he and Lena are repeating their vows? He shifted his gaze back to the bride and tried to calm himself down again. The strange image of Feng Nuana knocking on some glass while shouting his name came to his mind and made him chuckle. This silly image was enough to cheer him up as the bride had arrived. The music stopped with the bride and everyone waited for Zhang Dong to follow up. He had to strain himself immensely to keep his head steady. He reached out towards his wife and presented his palm towards her. The woman responded with grace and grasped it with hers. His hand was a lot larger than hers and he could feel the warmth coming from it after they held hands. He turned to the door that they were supposed to walk through. Side to side they continued with the people just looking on. He was on the right while she was on the left, akin to a traditional earthly wedding. They stepped through the entrance to the wedding hall and soon the people behind them followed suit. While walking forward, Zhang Dong continued to focus on not making his hat jiggle. The sensation of holding a woman's delicate hand was quite distracting though. The two remained silent to each other. Matt was feeling shy and didn't really know what to say while Feng Lina remained courteous as it was rude to speak out before the husband did. When they finally arrived at the altar, Zhang Jin was there in a black robe with more gold in it. He was also wearing a really tall hat with a Taoistic symbol on it. Everyone from the senior generation was here as well as some junior members that were close relatives. The others had to wait outside and had their own outside banquet to mingle in. Zhang Dong and Feng Lina. Today you enter as individuals, but you will leave here as husband and wife, blending your lives, expanding your family ties, and embarking upon the grandest adventure of unity. All those present have come to witness and celebrate your love and commitment this day. The people cheered a bit from the back. Quite a bit of the ladies were already tearing up as Zhang Jin continued to speak. Today, as you join yourselves in marriage, there is a vast and unknown future stretching out before you. Through your commitment to each other, may you grow and nurture a love that makes both of you better people, a love that will last throughout generations to come. Now, repeat after me. Zhang Jin looked to Zhang Dong with a smile on his face. He could feel how nervous he was even though his facial expression wasn't changing. Zhang Dong, are you willing to marry Feng Lina as your wife, in sacred marriage together for life? Whether she has sickness or health, poverty or wealth, beauty or is plain, in good times and in bad, are you willing to love her, to comfort her, to respect her, and protect her? And willing to be forever loyal to her? The bride was still covering her face by the veil but she could see her eyes through it. After a slight pause, he mustered the courage to reply. I am. Zhang Jin smiled a bit and then continued, making Feng Lina repeat the exact same vows that Zhang Dong just said. It didn't take long before she also replied with a resounding, I am willing. Zhang Jin nodded again and looked to the side. Zhang Lu approached with the golden wedding rings placed upon a red pillow. He looked quite proud that he could do this for his master on this occasion. Zhang Dong, take this ring and place it on Feng Lina's finger. Repeat after me. Feng Lina, I give you this ring as a symbol of the promise I made to you today. Zhang Dong repeated the short sentence and placed the ring that he had made on Lina's finger on her left hand as it was the closest hand to the heart. As before, Feng Lina repeated after Zhang Jin and slid the wedding ring on Zhang Dong's finger. May the blessings of life, the joy of love, the peace of truth, and the wisdom and strength of spirit, be your constant companion, now and always, as husband and wife. You may seal this union with a kiss. Zhang Dong moved his hands towards that veil and moved it out of the way. He finally witnessed his wife in all of her glory. She was just stunning, her large blue eyes were focused on him but they soon closed, her pink lips puckering up. He gulped momentarily before leaning down. He placed one of his hands against her neck and cheek. Finally, he leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss. A lot of people started cheering, hands going into the air while some flower petals started to fly around the room. The wedding was finally complete and now the banquet remained. Matt was sitting down by a giant table, hand in hand with his wife that was sitting next to him. He was feeling a bit dazed after the first proper kiss that the two had had at the wedding ceremony. He needed to keep a cool head though. This was the part of the ceremony where they were going to be accepting gifts from the other clans and sects. There was an old friend from 2 years ago looking at him. He was bald and looked like a monk and his name was Bangke. He had met him and Fanglina during the forced expedition to the sacred ground. They received a bunch of talismans and evil-repelling treasures as also an oath of recognition from him and his sect. They didn't reach out in their time of need though, so Matt didn't feel like he owed them anything. The boring exchange of bows and presents continued on. All various clan names were being thrown about but he didn't remember any of them. He even felt like some of the last names started repeating themselves. This made him realize that he was sitting on even more power and land now. It was as if he was an emperor on his own planet, at least surface-wise. He tried recalling what the next part of the ceremony would be. He would have to go through the whole sect on a decorated flying platform and wave at everyone there. He had already made his greeting speech and was just waiting till all of this was over. The thing that he was anxiously awaiting was the ending of this wedding, namely the wedding night. He was equally eager and equally afraid of not fulfilling his wife's womanly needs. The only thing he had to go back to was the one-night stand almost 3 years ago and knowledge from internet movies from back in his earthen days. Now from the Dragon Gate sect. His nervous contemplations were brought to an end after he noticed the name of one of the 3 great sects being mentioned. He went a bit on alert and also could feel Fanglina gripping his hand a bit tighter. If he liked it or not, these were people he had to contend with and offending them would never be anything good. Still, a line had to be drawn and there were certain things that they wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye to. The person that appeared was an older man, his cultivation wasn't high or anything and he conducted himself with grace. The gift wasn't anything grand but it made Zhang Dong feel like this sect was being respectful. He just nodded and thanked the man and that was it. Next came the demon subduing sect, this time it was a lady close to his age. She looked a bit haughty but she also managed to deliver the present of goodwill without making much of a scene. The trouble only started with the third and last guest that was from the Limitless Sword Society. The person was your typical young master as always. Matt wasn't sure why there were so many of those types in this world but they seemed to always cause trouble. He arrived late and even held up the ceremony process. It would be seen as a disgrace if they changed the order now. The first red flag was that he was carrying his sword on his hip. Apparently the Limitless Sword Sect's cultivators treasured their weapons and would rarely allow them to be taken away. Still, this young man wasn't at a position where he would be allowed to do that in front of a nascent soul master like Zhang Dong. He was clearly disrespecting them, not afraid as he had his sect to back him up. Matt just gave out a sigh as he watched the man that looked to be in his late 20s strut in. He wasn't sure how old he was but he could very well be over 50 even if he looked like this. His core formation cultivation gave him quite the longevity up to 500 years of age. A nascent soul elder in contrast mostly lived between 1,000 and 2,000 years. Greetings from the Limitless Sword Society. The man had a couple of people behind them. They didn't bow or even clasp their hands while approaching Zhang Dong and Fanglina. Lina grasped Dong's hand even tighter than before and he could feel like she could have some kind of a rage outburst soon. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Matt wasn't all that mad. He had already kind of gotten used to those haughty young master types. He already went through battles and knew that nothing good came from aggravating them. This showed after the Dark Palm sect debacle which was caused by one of their junior members. He even started blaming the parents more than the young masters for how they acted. If their elders showed them how to present themselves and not see everyone as a little bug to squish, they would probably be normal people. He was just a bit afraid that his wife could do something emotional as this was her wedding and women tended to take it a bit more seriously than others. He did a small side glance to his wife. He could see her eyebrows twitching furiously at the display of disrespect. We came bearing gifts for you, honorable lord, and your beautiful wife. Hope you cherish this treasure. The man from the sect clapped his hands together and 2 of his retainers brought out his gift. It was in a polished bronze container which they placed on the offering table. They opened it up while everyone looked with curiosity. Inside were low-quality pills that made more brows furrow. The people started whispering with each other. This was a blatant show of disrespect. Those pills that were getting presented looked to not even be above mortal grade in rarity, probably at the lower end of it. The people from the United Element sect were appalled by this behavior. They were sure that the young man was just throwing his weight around. He had some backing as his granduncle was indeed a nascent soul master from that sword sect. Still, the United Elements sect leader managed to last through the battle with the Dark Palm sect's Yang Guanyu and even took on 5 cultivators at once. This young man was probably unaffected by this fact and probably thought it was just baseless rumors. Oh, quite the high-quality earth-grade pills you have brought with you there. After a moment of silence, Zhang Dong's calm voice resounded through the banquet hall. Everyone looked to the sect leader and wondered what their leader was on about. The pills that those people brought in were clearly low-grade mortal ones. Before anyone could ask about what Zhang Dong was talking about, one of the pills moved upwards. It flew towards the United Element sect's leader and stopped in front of his face. He moved his free hand over to the pill and tapped it with his index finger. The people weren't sure what he was doing but soon realized that it wasn't anything they could fathom. After the little tap, the pill started changing, it spun around and exuded a large amount of spiritual energy. The ugly brownish color started to change into a golden one as the pill increased in quality, shooting all the way to the pinnacle of Earth grade in a matter of moments. This was one of the upgrades that his crafting abode. He didn't need to be in it for some of its functions to work, as he could affect the items outside. What the haughty young master had brought over were simple chi replenishing pills. They could be easily upgraded as they didn't really require any more ingredients, just some pure spiritual chi. The shameful present was turned into something more bearable. No one really offered anything at the heaven grade, which was not something many were willing to do. By doing it like this, Zhang Dong was trying not to start a fight while also showing off his power. The young master in question looked surprised. By turning the trash pills he brought over to something valuable, Zhang Dong had delivered a blow to his face. Before he could speak out about it though, he felt a strong presence washing over him. Listen here, you little shit, I'm not sure what you were trying to achieve with this, but those trinkets that you are wearing won't be able to protect you from me. Zhang Dong was the one speaking while concealing his voice so that only this person from the Limitless Sword Society could hear him. The young master was stunned. The protective treasures should be able to block out any nascent soul master's spiritual power and even teleport him back home if he got into trouble. For some reason, they weren't activating and he couldn't move a muscle or even speak. I will ignore this only once if you dare disrespect me or my wife again. Your elders won't even find traces of your soul behind. Now just smile, apologize to my wife and move on with your pathetic excuse of a life. The man felt the strong power vanishing and he could breathe again. He quickly scanned his treasures and to his surprise, they were all unresponsive. They were all heavenly grade but somehow they all stopped working. He couldn't even teleport out of here to save himself. He realized that he could very well die now if he continued with this charade. He just did what he was told to, bowing down while his face went pale. Excuse me, honorable elders. I'm not feeling too well. He stumbled back and almost fell over the people with him, surprised at the reaction of their young master. They rarely saw him this way. He looked meek and afraid. Zhang Dong was good enough in masking his aura so that most of the people in the room didn't know what he did. 2 people did though. Feng Lina was one and Huoqiang was the other one. The latter burst out in laughter and even pointed at the Limitless Sword sect cultivators that were leaving. Look at them run with their tails between their legs. The 2 people that came before him were a bit surprised, but it didn't take much knowledge to figure out about what transpired here. None of them could tell what the United Sect Patriarch did, but it had to have left an impression of the young haughty man. They were surprised that his protective treasures didn't activate. This prompted them to be extra careful. This was Zhang Dong's home turf. He had designed all of the formations and with the help of the spiritual vein, they also boosted his power. The youth's treasures were all heaven grade but at the lowest spectrum, so deactivating them while he was under his grand formation was easy to accomplish. The gift giving continued for some more time and finally, the day was coming to an end. The street lights that were spread out through the entire sect lit up as the sun went down. The whole sect has a more modern look to it, as those lights also had light bulbs in them instead of candles. Feng Lina and Zhang Dong were now making their rounds on the decorative flying platform. Waving at their new sect members, the 2 didn't talk that much. Whenever Zhang Dong tried doing some small talk, the woman started blushing. He didn't think she would be this bashful right before the big night. The 2 finally flew out into the sunset and glided towards a secluded villa. A separate protective formation churned and engulfed them in a thick barrier that didn't allow anyone to peek in. The other people continued mingling with each other and Zhang Jin found himself surrounded by beautiful women from all sides. In the future, there would be tales of the big female cultivator brawl that happened after the famous Zhang Dong's wedding that would be recounted in history books for generations. The woman and man of the hour awkwardly went in through the door of the villa their sect members had prepared for them. Apparently it was lifted from somewhere and brought over by a flying ship instead of being built. Now they were supposed to consummate their marriage. Zhang Dong looked at his blushing wife and nodded to himself. The final battle has just begun. A mostly naked Zhang Dong looked up to the ceiling. He had woken up after an evening filled with passion. The wedding night had lasted all up till the next day as the two lovers showed stamina worthy of nascent soul masters. Unbeknownst to him, a legend had been started this way. It would be later named the passionate earthquake that kept everyone from the sect up for the entire night. Feng Lina laid bare under the red bed sheets. Her wedding dress was tossed to the side along with Zhang Dong's bead hat. He smiled a bit as he descended without making any noise. He used his nascent soul powers to cover his sleeping wife with the rest of the bed cloth before heading outside. The villa that the two were now resting in was quite large and it even had a nice room with a fireplace. He sat down with a towel wrapped around his nether regions, his chest exposed. He started spacing out, the memories of the previous night still fresh in his mind. Well, that was something, she is surprisingly flexible. He found himself comparing this night to his first time. That was a long time ago, reaching 3 years now. It felt a bit different and somehow better, but he wasn't sure if it was only due to him not having done the deed in a while. This cultivator body worked differently than his old one as he didn't feel like he needed to perform the usual tasks. We didn't use any protection either, but she is my wife so that shouldn't matter. He recalled that he might have gotten a bit overzealous but what was done was done. He would face the consequences later. He stayed seated there without doing much, there were no servants or anyone to bother them here either. Soon enough he heard the door opening up and the figure of Feng Lina appeared. Husband. His mouth quivered a bit after he heard the way she referred to him. He was certainly not used to that one as the woman used to refer to him as senior brother not long ago. Wife? Wifey? I'm down here. He felt a bit awkward, the two might have known each other for years now but their interactions were limited to mostly business. Feng Lina had woken up a bit after Zhang Dong left the room. She was a bit out of it at first and then confused as she didn't find her husband next to her. She recalled the previous night and how forceful her hubby had been which caused her to blush furiously. She then left the room in search of him, worried that he might have left somewhere. She didn't need to go far as he was sitting just there on the floor below with only some cloth covering his lower parts. Zhang Dong looked at his wife. She had appeared wearing some kind of nightgown robe hybrid that he wasn't accustomed to. The moment she saw him sitting there she started blushing yet again which kind of made him want to tease her. The two had already seen themselves naked so from his standpoint there was no reason to be shy. Are you hungry? The sect had prepared a feast in the other room and even set up a formation to keep everything fresh. He stood up from his seat while looking up. Feng Lina covered her face a bit but followed the movements of her hubby while looking between her fingers. No need to be shy after what we did yesterday. He had gotten over his nervousness during the deed, his wife on the other hand was still acting a bit reserved. He flew up to her and lifted her up into his arms before heading out into the room with the food. Lina was skittish at first, wiggling in his arms while trying not to show too much skin. She would probably need a bit more time to get used to this type of treatment. The two continued their lovey-dovey honeymoon for a couple of days before heading back to the sect. They still had a lot of things to do and even if they wanted they couldn't just remain there. They were greeted back by their family members. Zhang Jin and Huojiang had smirks on their faces. Zhang Dong was unsure why but soon he would discover the earthquake he caused. Welcome back Patriarch and Matriarch. The people clasped their hands while acting awkwardly, even though their two nascent soul masters were behind a defensive formation, the tremors reached up to the main castle structure. Luckily they had reinforced all of the furniture in that villa beforehand. Anything happen while we were gone? Zhang Dong asked while floating down, hand to hand with his wife. The guests have already left, the people from those 3 sects left on the first day. He recalled the young man that tried to insult him and the other two. He managed to resolve the situation somehow but wasn't happy that they still weren't getting taken seriously. Good, how are the formations? We should be able to proceed with the plans. Yes, the crafting masters would like a word with you, they want you to approve the teleportation gate design. So we are close to the finish line. He continued talking with Zhang Jin. The moment they connected the dimensional regalia with the outside was the moment they could start setting up the true sect. This was an immortal grade treasure and it was repairing itself the more energy they fed it. There was no danger of it getting destroyed by a cultivator, the only thing that could cause damage to it was another item at that grade. The medallion was hidden in a closed location at the sect. He deliberated hiding it in the place that he found the floating cube. But he was afraid that someone or something could appear there and snatch the treasure with his people in it. Feng Lina and Zhang Dong finally parted with each other. Huojiang and her would leave the sect for now and patrol the rest of their lands. There was still danger of other nascent soul masters trying to sneak in. The Patriarch would remain and help set up the core area for their most trusted people. There was much work to be done, and now that the defensive arrays were fully operational, Matt didn't need to remain so passive. He could start crafting weapons, creating pills, and combining techniques to form new superior ones. If this continued, they could finally become a proper sect and even open their doors to new disciples. He also had the option of traveling through the lands. There were a couple of undiscovered places that reached into the lower areas of the empire. Most people didn't bother with those as spiritual energy was faint there, unsuited for cultivation. He was able to find some treasures in that type of location. There was a spirit vein hidden here as well as the obsidian material that he couldn't even budge with his full power. He wasn't in a hurry, the sects wouldn't be going against them for quite some time. Everyone adopted a wait-and-see approach as they weren't willing to offend his so-called master. Their new sect was also flying under the radar of the true behemoths of the empire. The other powers also had others to contend with, just as the fallen Dark Palm sect. If they showed any sign of weakness they would be eradicated. Think I can design that testing course for new disciples now? He thought back to the words of fiction that he used to read. They were weirdly similar to how this world operated. He remembered the sects setting up various tests that the prospects could go through. He already approved one idea. It would be a corridor with some wooden puppet soldiers. Similar to the test that his disciples went through at the Dao festival. They would need to reach the end to qualify further. There would also be a chi measuring device, but it wouldn't require a person to perform any punches. He had his system to help him out. He could imbue some devices with some nice measuring features. He wanted to create a machine to measure all-around aptitude, current strength level as also their deposition. His system could tell a person's alignment, if they had an evil heart or were someone just. The system showed it to him in a D&D alignment system, ranging from lawful good to chaotic evil. These alignments weren't set in stone though, they could even shift in the middle of battle. For instance, the Dark Palm sect leader's alignment was lawful evil before they started the fight. When he turned himself into that monster, it shifted to chaotic evil in a matter of seconds. Still, this would save him from accepting anyone sketchy into his sect. He was still on the fence if he should accept chaotic neutral people. They were a bit random to work with. You never knew what they would do. They could very well abandon their sect brothers in a time of need. Would be probably better to cap it at true neutral, just to be safe. While Zhang Dong was thinking about the improvement of his sect, another scene was playing out somewhere deeper in the empire. There was a certain gathering of old men and women taking place. Only two from them were talking with each other, the rest remained in place without moving a muscle. Hey, old Wang, that grandson of yours has been causing quite a ruckus in the section. He even crippled old Jing's grandson and stole his fiancée. One old man asked another one while laughing. Everyone in here was a nascent soul cultivator and a pillar of this behemoth of a sect. He won the duel fair and square. If that bastard even dares to lay a finger on my grandson, he knows what will happen. Is he taking after you? So ruthless. The two laughed while sipping on some spirit alcohol. The other people in the room didn't respond. One of them seemed a bit dejected by what was being said here, but he held his mouth shut. He sure has been progressing at a fast pace since 2 years ago, quite the late bloomer. The person called Wang nodded at the remark while sipping on some more alcohol. As long as he progresses, wish he didn't develop that little hobby of his. That girl probably won't last long either. The moment the nascent soul elder mentioned his grandson's hobby, the other people in the room started coughing and looking to the sides. Well, geniuses are like that. As long as the sect prospers, I don't think we should worry about that. Not something we can't fix with some spirit stones. The other man laughed out loud while the others looked even more uncomfortable after hearing him talk. The man named Wang just gave out a sigh and nodded. Enough about my grandson. Anything of note in the empire? It would be nice if we got some good news for once. Maybe that bastard of an Azure Emperor died. If only old Wang, if only. Nothing much besides one of the middle-sized sects going under. What was their name again? Darkfoot? Dark Fist? Well, never mind, they weren't important. Think the other little sects already had their fill of their lands. They colluded with each other to ransack their remains, not like they pose a threat to our soaring dragon sect. Old Wang just snorted. That's a given. There is only one reason we aren't at the top of this empire. The other man that Wang was talking to also gave out a snort of disdain. They talked some more while the other people in the room remained silent, not uttering a word unless they got asked. The two elders delved into the country's politics some more. rumbling on for quite a bit till everyone left and it was already dark outside. The old man stood up from his seat and walked outside. Junior greets the sect leader. The man didn't look back as he continued going, his eyes started glowing with a blue light before he disappeared into the ether. He appeared moments later above the large sect ground that he was the master of. He just glanced at the massive structures that were on even larger mountain peaks. Soon my sect will reign supreme over this land, we will crush everyone in our path and even the Azure Emperor will stand no chance. He smirked slightly before disappearing once again, this time towards an unknown destination. Take care Wronger, you must succeed, the future of this tribe depends on it. A large burly man was giving his son a pat on the back. This man was the Tatar tribe's chief and he was talking to his son Yang Rong. Don't worry father, I'll be sure to get in, the sect is really close so I'll come to visit often. The youth laughed out loud while smacking his chest that had gotten quite wide within the years. He wasn't alone here, there were many other youths at the chi condensation level gathered. People from the village were seeing them off as finally, the honorable sect that they owed their lives to was opening up their doors. Cheng Yun was also there. The boy was one of the first people that Matt had come across in this world. The two youths and some of their tribe members were packed up and ready to make the walk towards the United Element sect's location. The sect had set up their main headquarters in the nearby forest. This caused some trouble with the beasts that fled in all directions, but the sect was nice enough to reimburse the tribes for the loss of food. After some years they had finally announced that they would be accepting new disciples. They were divided into age groups depending on the realm someone was in. For instance, they didn't accept anyone above the age of 25 that was still a chi condensation practitioner. This left most of the people in these lower lands without any hope. Only the youngsters would be allowed to participate in the sect trials. Cultivators of the foundation establishment level were also tested, they would receive higher positions also depending on their age. There was also a cap there that ended at 50. It was obvious from these limits that the new sect was looking for youthful cultivators. There were a couple of theories out there why it was like this. The most feasible one being that they didn't want talentless old cultivators in their midst. The trials would be taking place in a week. The Tatar tribe was located a day away from the United Elements sect. The tribe people were going there a bit early as they just couldn't wait any longer. They knew the woods like the back of their hand and would probably arrive even sooner. Take care. Make us proud. For the tribe. People were waving and hugging the youths that were below the age of 25. There were no tribesmen that were at the foundation establishment level. There was quite a bit at stake here, the future of this tribe was on the line here and the youths knew this. The Tatar tribe wasn't the only one around here. There were many similar tribes and villages scattered all over this massive forest. Everyone knew that if even one person gets accepted in as an outer sect disciple it would be enough to protect them. This was how things worked in this world. If the other tribes managed to land a spot in the new powerful sect they would be able to toss their weight around. There were long-lasting grudges between some of the tribes. They also battled with each other for resources and food on a regular basis. Cheng Yun and Yang Rong that was in no way related to the Dark Palm sect leader finally left the village. They had about 20 people in their group all trained and previously tested by their village elders. The sect didn't really specify anything besides the age limit but no one was willing to let untrained kids participate in the trials. The sect might take offense if they sent juniors of low cultivation bases and low skill. Brother Rong, do you think we will succeed? Cheng Yun asked while the group moved through the woods. The two didn't used to see eye to eye all those years ago but they have gotten past it. The reason the two were so close now and considered themselves brothers, was Zhang Dong. He had saved both of them and the two bonded over it. Of course we will succeed, the mighty senior even blessed us with his presence twice already. Rong was pumped and believed that there wouldn't be any problems. He had been training for all those years, even hogging most of the bathhouse that Zhang Dong cultivated in to get faster breakthroughs. You are right, he might favor our tribe. I wonder what the inside of that sect looks like, we never got far enough to see anything. The two were caught by some United Element elders some time ago when they tried seeking it to ask Zhang Dong to accept them as disciples. They were punished harshly by the tribe elders after returning home. It was seen as quite the disgrace at the time. Their parents were even worried that the tribe might be annihilated if they offended someone from that overpowered sect. Luckily nothing like that occurred, the sect apparently was quite honorable and didn't act out in anger against weaker factions like this tribe. I bet everything inside is covered with white and green jade. You can hear calm zither music and beautiful elder sisters fly on their swords every day, their long hair just dancing in the wind. The two blushed and drooled a bit. They were still young men and were hoping to find a partner in the sect. Cultivators that practiced body refining techniques tended to be more beautiful than your regular people. They got a glimpse of some beautiful elder sisters when they came to pick up the remnants of the Dark Palm sect. What if we manage to catch the eye of Fairy Shui? Hey? Do you think Fairy Shui will look twice at an ugly bastard like you? She will be mine. Rong replied to Yun while laughing. The two started pushing each other in good faith. The other one just smirked as he retaliated. Zhang Dong's disciples were quite famous among the younger generation. Lu was considered to be the epitome of a young man while Shui was of a woman. They were seen as perfect disciples both in looks and cultivation. Everyone wanted to meet them and call them senior brother and senior sister. I wondered why it stunk so much. It were some smelly brats from the Tatar tribe. Rong's and Yun's wrestling was interrupted by some voices. They looked to the voices and spotted some people wearing pelts. Scum from the Black Scar tribe. Who are you calling scum? You trash. The two groups faced each other. Both sides had a similar number of people. This was one of the tribes that were in opposition to the Tatar tribe. They lived close to each other and always competed for game or other resources. Sometimes there were even bloody battles. Brother Rong, we shouldn't. If we battle them here, we might not make it for the sect trial. Cheng Yun positioned himself behind Yang Rong and tried pulling him back. On the other side, the Black Scar tribe was acting in a similar way. Their two leaders were at their throats, but the others knew that it would be better to conserve their strength for the tests. You are lucky that we are close to the esteemed sect grounds. After I secure my spot as an inner disciple, I will make your tiny tribe pay for all it's done. The groups started barking insults at each other, but luckily no one was willing to fight just yet. They weren't willing to lose their chance of getting into the powerful sect. A small injury could very well cause them to fail one of the tests. It was unknown when the next trials would take place. They could be too old to participate if they don't make it in now. You an inner disciple? Ha! You won't even qualify as a servant. We will see. You should pray to not meet me at the trial. The two leaders of the tribes glared at each other before moving away. There was still some more walking to be done, but with the other tribe now with them, Yang Rong decided to increase the pace. A little competition took place as the Black Scar tribesmen realized that the people from the Tatar tribe were trying to get to the renowned sect first. They started off slow by speed walking, but soon enough it turned to running. Everyone was giving it all as they sped towards the sect grounds at full throttle. With the speed increase, it didn't take them that long to get there. They realized that they were someplace new the moment they got there. The forest vanished and they could see flatland and grass that stretched out for kilometers. The United Element sect workers cleared a lot of the forest around the area that Zhang Dong designated as the center. The trees were uprooted and the ground was covered with green spirit grass. Through the grass a brick road path was going through. In the distance, the youths could see massive walls stretching far. There was even a moat before that wall and a drawbridge at the entrance. We are here, it's New Spirit Spring City. Cheng Yun said while panting, tired from all the sprinting he was doing for some hours. Yes, the sect is past the city and further in. The sect was established first. The whole area was sealed off with a grand formation and walls. Still, there were many residents from the old Spirit Spring City remaining. Zhang Dong gave the people two options. The Zhang clan would be relocating, which was a given. They would welcome them to establish the city here if they wished, or move back to the old one. The previous one was destroyed during the quick war that took place. Some of the costs would be covered by the sect and the people could rebuild. A staggering majority wished to remain with the new sect. The people felt that the sect leader was an honorable man, which was proven during the battle that took place. They let all the residents evacuate and were even willing to pay for their losses. Who else than the United Element sect would do such a thing? No one. They would be lucky if some other overbearing sect would even let them live in one of their towns if they paid them for it. This one would be letting them stay with fewer strings attached. They still would need to pay taxes, but they would be given enough time to set up their shops and businesses for that. The youths looked at the giant walls. They were at least 15 meters tall and there were even larger guard towers connected to them. They also noticed that they weren't the first people to arrive. There was already a big line to the large main gate and it was moving very slowly. Above them flying ships and cultivators were whizzing past them, and they could even see some of the robes that the United Elements sect wore. Hey, look there! That person is flying on a big jade sword. He is wearing a blue robe. It must be an inner sect disciple. The youths came informed. They even knew about the types of robes that the disciples were wearing. A blue one represented an inner sect disciple, which was quite an honor. After getting past the trials they didn't expect to get anything but a grey robe of an outer sect disciple. This wasn't a problem as they knew that you could rise in ranks. How did they know all of this? The sect released some information before the recruitment drive. Some of their disciples traveled the lands in hopes of attracting promising young students and maybe some older masters that were looking for a new home. Brother Wrong, we should get in line before those bastards from the Black Scar tribe get there before us. You are right, Brother Yoon, we must be there before them. Brothers and sisters, run for it. Everyone ran towards the long line with smiles on their faces. The only thing on their mind was successfully entering the big glorious sect.